Hello everybody, we're back with another video. This time it's just me. So this week we're making separate videos like we did with the drawing one, because this week we read books for the whole week, or 10 days ish, and we're sort of just going to be doing a review, less a review but just like saying what we learned from it, and so actually sticks and we can get the most out of this book. So it's basically just explaining what we learned from it, and also sort of just giving a bit of a review, if you want to call it that. Anyway, the book that I'm going to be talking about today is called Greatness Awaits You, The 5 Pillars of Real Leadership by Riccardo Bosi. So, if you don't know who Riccardo Bosi is, he's sort of like a motivational speaker, and he sort of just like gives like lectures on, how to be a good leader, and he's also involved in certain political things as well in Australia. So my dad got this book for me, and I thought it'd be cool to read because I actually know who this is and I can relate to it a bit more. So yeah, it's a really cool book. It's about leadership. It's actually a very informative book. I chose to read this instead of some other book because I actually prefer books, that actually teach you something, less than, like a story. So, and leadership obviously is a very important thing to having in life. Anyway, let's get on to the video. Okay, so now before we start, reviewing the actual bits in the book and each chapter, what he talks about, we're first just got to I'm just going to explain to you what this book is about, who it's for, and the reason you should be reading this book, and what you should get out of this book, sort of thing. So this book obviously teaches you about leadership, but it's also very motivational, and it basically explains the type of person you are and what type of leader you need to be. And it's not just telling you what you need to do, it basically helps you find out what you need to improve on and what stage you're at. It basically reminds you during the book if you can't do a certain thing, or basically how you need to get there, and what basically you need to complete your skills to become a leader. So it's very helpful in the sense it helps you realize what stage you're at, which a lot of books probably don't provide. So that's why this is a very unique book. It also basically talks about not just the basically foundation of being a leader, like the basics that you gotta have, but it sort of reminds you of why you gotta do it. Not just the basics of basically you gotta be a leader to basically provide everyone with like support, so that they can lead and manage it. Everyone basically reminds you why you're doing it, and that has to come from a place of love. Anyway, that's just a bit about what it's about. I also just want to talk about the type of person. It's obviously for people who have this feeling like they want to be something more. They just need to be inspired, or they need basically a bit of help, or they just want to read a book about this to basically improve their leadership skills because they want to keep improving and they know they can be better. So this book is sort of like a inspirational book, like I said earlier, but it's also like a manual, in the sense it tells you good step-by-step instructions on what you have to do, but it also uses a lot of in real life scenarios, so that's why I really like this book. Anyway, now let's just get on to each basically chapter, how I'm going to do it. It's called the 5 Pillars of Real Leadership, and there's 5 main chapters, but there's also like an introduction. So now I'm just going to talk about the introduction, what he talks about, and then I'm basically just going to go over each chapter for a couple of minutes, just explaining what I took away from it, and what I understood from it, and my view on what he spoke about. Anyway, onto that part. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the new part of this book and the start of this book, and I'm just going to talk about basically the parts that I want to talk about, and parts that actually have meaning for this video. So first, it is probably the most important question before starting to read this book, and without it, there's no point. So it is, why is it important to learn real leadership skills? Well, I'm just going to basically talk about a few points of basically why, and I'm just going to explain a bit, and hopefully that'll give you a bit better understanding and make you more interested to read this book, and make you realize that it's a very important skill to have. The first reason why leadership is a very important life skill to have is because it basically can apply to anything, and the point I want to make here, it can apply to your family. How are you going to lead your family if you don't know basically the basic and advanced leadership skills you need to lead your family and to protect them from, basically situations and know what's best for your family? That's a very basic but very important reason why you should be learning and know basically how to be a leader. So in any situation, you know what's the best thing for your family. It also makes you not reliant on other, external sources. And let's go back to the family, like protecting your family and leading your family. It basically allows you to have freedom, because if you don't know how to lead, you don't know how to basically lead your family, control your own decisions, and you'll have to rely on other people, or the government, which you don't want. So it's very important for the well-being of your family, so you have freedom to make whatever decisions you want and you know how to make them. The last main tip I want to, not tip, sorry, but just point I want to make that he's talked about in the book is nothing happens without leadership. And what I mean by that is, with any endeavor or thing basically that happens, let's say you're starting a new business, nothing happens without leadership. So that business won't get going without your leadership or someone's leadership. Because in any situation or something that you basically create, you need someone to lead the way, or not one specific person, but there has to be leadership to basically encourage people to, basically manage people to sort of get everything working together. Someone has to lead them or everyone will be lost. So yeah, that's just, it applies to any scenario, any situation, because nothing happens without leadership. If people don't have leadership and they don't know how to lead people to basically help them become the best of their ability, nothing happens without it. And that's why the most successful people know real leadership. Also, to be a leader is very important because basically others learn from you and they get confidence to basically do their own things, and you can be an inspiration, someone who motivates people, because you have to find motivation from somewhere. So say you're very inspired and you look up to someone, who's achieved something. If you're a leader, people have to look up to you. You may have been their leader, but then you've inspired, a future generation to become a better leader themselves and become better and do great things. And that's also that's why it's very good to become a leader, because it's very good for others. And someone has to give someone, that bit of motivation, or that's something to trigger something inside them to tell them, you know what, I can do this sort of thing. So it's basically, it's good for everyone. It's not just good for you or your close people. That's why leadership is a very important life skill to have, because obviously it helps everyone, not just yourself. So now we've just gone over basically some reasons on why you should learn real leadership and why it's a thing you have to know to live a free life of joy and abundance. It's a very important life skill to have. But now we just need to define real leadership to basically understand exactly what it is, because a lot of people will think it's something, or think of something what leadership is, but it's not actually that. So when I talk about leadership, let me define it for you so you understand what exactly that I'm talking about. I'm just going to give you a basic definition. I can't remember, I've written it in my notes, but I'm not sure this is exactly how he's written in the book, but it's basically my version, if anything. A real leader is one who, using nothing but what they are, unites many to achieve greatness. So just think about that, what it means. I've also just written some other notes basically to just add on to this. So basically what I've done, I've just written a bunch of notes of basically saying I'm going to read about 5 things of what makes a true leader and a good leader. A good leader doesn't have to use any form of manipulation or intimidation to get others to follow. So what this means is basically, like we've read earlier, so basically what I'm doing here, I'm just breaking down the first passage that I wrote and read. You have to use any form of manipulation to intimidate, or intimidation to get others to follow. So you're basically using just what you are. And what that means is a good leader inspires people. He doesn't have to force them to do anything. Otherwise, they're not doing it to their full capability, and they're not doing it for the right reasons, which is very important. A lot of people think real leadership is management, but management is just the ability to coordinate activities to reach a set goal. So that's what I was talking about earlier. People might think this is what leadership is, but it's just a small part of it. So yeah, managing is great, but knowing basically how to deal with people and how to get the most out of people is a true leader. Not just be able to say, you do this, you do that, finish by this time, and if you don't have this done, I'll get someone else to do it. That's good. It's a very important part of leadership, organization, management, but it's not the whole picture. It's not the full picture of what leadership is, and it's much more than that. Now, I just want to talk about the foundation of leadership, and that is having a good relationship with the people that are following, the people that you are leading, because anything that basically that has potential to succeed has to have a good relationship with each other. It's like a marriage. If they don't have a good relationship with each other, they're not going to make it in the long run. So that's same thing applies to this. You have to say you have an organization. In this case, he uses that as an example in the book. You have to have a good relationship, with your partners, with your employees. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to trust them, and you're not going to be able to know how they're feeling and what they can do at certain times. So that's where we go into the first part of basically the foundation of leadership, and that's the trust, foundation of trust. Now, I just talked about relationships and how it's the foundation of any person who leads a certain amount of people. So the first thing is trust is the foundation of any relationship. So as you know, like I used earlier, say in a marriage, if there's no trust in a relationship, it also won't last. And basically, what you're doing as a leader, you're having a relationship with, people, or whoever you're leading, whoever's following. And in order to have a good relationship, to basically know how to lead them and get the most out of them, how to get the most potential out of people, is to have trust. Because when you trust people, you know that someone's got your back, or you know that you can basically trust someone to get the job done, because you develop this from past experiences and doing it yourself and working with other people. So it's important to have trust, because otherwise you can't rely on someone to basically get the set goals done. So it's very good to have trust in a relationship, and trust that someone won't they'll put their heart and soul into it, and they'll put the most effort into the certain task. And that's how you also know how to basically get the right person for the job, or when someone is not as qualified for a certain thing. And the thing is with trust, that if you don't trust your people, they basically won't trust you. And in order for them to trust you, or you to trust them, you have to be trustworthy. So if they're not trustworthy, you don't have a relationship, and it'll be very difficult to get something going. But first, as you are the leader, you have to be the most trustworthy, the most competent, the best of the best, because you're the one they look up to, they look as an example. So you have to have the qualities of being trustworthy. The way you are trustworthy, how you gain someone's trust, is you first have to trust yourself. If you don't trust yourself, why should someone trust you? Or why should, that sort of thing, If you have to trust yourself. And, well, what if you don't trust yourself? Well, that's a very important thing you have to work on. You basically have to always go in your judgment, even if it ends up being right or wrong. You have to go in your judgment, not someone else's, because you have to be able to trust yourself and know that you control your decisions, and you are responsible for everything. And that what makes a really good leader. They have to be the ones who always trust their own judgment, and they don't rely on anyone else's opinion, because they know that they're right, because they trust themselves. And the leader of a certain thing has to be the most trustworthy, and they have to be able to trust themselves the most. And this is a very important skill to learn. So you realize that leadership is more than just being able to manage people, like I mentioned earlier. Some people might think, and it's really just about knowing how people work, and also just knowing what people's capabilities are. And that's by not trusting your own judgment, making your own decisions. Now I just want to touch on a bit about how to gain someone's trust, because as I said, trust is the foundation of any relationship, which is the foundation of any organization, and it's still part of the first part of the book, and I just want to touch on it. What he's called in the book is the 5 components of trust. So the first one is being honest in how you think, how you do things, and how you say things, because honesty basically comes over time. People realize that you're honest and that they can trust you. And if you're not honest, they can't trust you because of either past experiences, or they know that they can't rely on you in the most crucial situations, which is you have to be an option as a leader. The second part that you have to basically, the second trait that you have to have as a leader is being competent in what you do. And what I mean by that is have a certain standard that you basically set for yourself, and then the people you lead will follow. And as the leader, like I said, you have to be the best of the best out of your organization. You have to be the standard that everyone has to reach, So set a standard and be competent in what you do, because if you're not competent, it will sort of set a standard for your employees. They'll think, oh well, if you can't do it, why do I have to, sort of thing. Another one is being consistent in what you do. Always, and this applies to everything. Be consistently honest, consistently competent, and it especially speaks for itself. Be consistent in everything you do, and be a man of your word. Lastly, that we've got here for this, basically the 5 components of trust and to be trusted, to be trustworthy, is be loyal. Be loyal to your people. Don't let them down when it's most needed. Always be honest with them. Basically, just be very loyal to your people so they can trust you. And loyalty is like an end relationship. No loyalty, it won't succeed. And it's the same case here. Anyway, that's got to sum up just being trustworthy and how to basically be trustworthy and have a relationship with your people. Anyway, next part of the book. Okay, so now we are on to the first official out of 5 pillars. The first official pillar, and this one's called your character. So what this is basically the traits, the nature of basically how you do things, your virtues as a leader. And this is how I mentioned earlier, this book helps you realize at what point of as a leader you are, what you need to improve on. And so this is a really important chapter in the book. Anyway, let's get started. Now, how do you find your character? How do you basically know what virtues within, what comprises of your character, And your character is revealed every day in your life, basically how you deal with every situation. And that's what they mean by character, and that's the nature of character. So, say in a situation, you you stand up for what you know is right. That means you are very courageous and you are very, loyal, because you got to back down because you trust your morals and you always live by your morals. That sort of tells people what type of character you are. And you also have to have a very strong character and a very firm character, because in order to be a leader, you have to basically, like we said earlier, be loyal and trustworthy. And if they can spot that in your character, they can't spot that in your character, they're not going to basically trust you. And basically how your organization operates and how it if you'll achieve things depends on you. And if they see you as someone who doesn't care, that doesn't take much pride in what they do, as someone who basically someone they wouldn't want to look up to, they won't work well, and you basically won't thrive. And basically, any organization is not the assets it is made up of, but it is the people. The people make the organization, and that's why your character is very important for your people to look up to and for them to learn off. So staying on the theme of being a virtuous person, how you basically identify these things. That in this book he used an example. It's a very maybe not very realistic, but it could be. Is if an accountant made an accountant error of 50,000 and basically the person he's working for didn't notice, Would you take it or would you not? If you didn't take it, that means you're a virtuous man. You stick by your morals. So this is the type of person a leader has to be, a virtuous man. That's a very good word I just found out now in the book that I missed and forgot to tell you earlier. The first specific virtue you must have to be a good leader and to basically have the qualification to lead to lead people and to be sort of the boss is basically have courage. The definition of courage is you act in the face of fear. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You stick by your morals, and even if, people, don't agree, or basically everyone's basically, choosing the other way, but you still know that what you believe is the correct way, you stick with it, and you don't let pressure, any sort of pressure change your mind because you know what's right. And this is sort of the type of person you want your people to look up to. You don't want someone, who, even though he believes in something, when, something scary, so something that he's fearful of, he just runs away, and he leaves. Like, say, an organization, someone is, they're facing a lot of financial trouble and the company is struggling to stay alive, and last second, he bails on everyone, even though he has many people working for him and their jobs rely on him. Basically, he leaves them without anything, and that's basically, he's not courageous because he basically quits in the face of fear. And that's what a leader must have. They must be very courageous. Another thing that's very important about being courageous is, why are people courageous? Where does courage come from? And this is very important. Courage comes from love, and basically acts of courage come from love. It doesn't come from, and if it comes from, self-greed, that's not real courage. Not from self-greed, you're acting out of love. And that's what you have to think about when going into any situation that, involves you, taking a stand into what you believe. It comes from love. And if it comes from anywhere else, it's not the right thing for you. And it's like in any endeavor, if it doesn't come from a place of love and you're just doing it for the wrong reasons, it won't turn out for you, because everything that is worth fighting for comes from love. The second virtue you must have as a leader is have wisdom. So you apply knowledge and experience, common sense to basically every situation you come towards. And this goes hand in hand. All these virtues come hand in hand. If you, have courage, but, you don't have wisdom, and, you're acting just without, logically thinking, it's not always going to turn out for the best. Even at the moment it might seem like the right thing to do, you've got to have wisdom and, be wise when going into a situation, because it could depend. It basically depends. The people you love depend on it, or the people that you lead depend on it. If you're not, if you act out of your ego and you're not, wise when you're going into a situation, it may not be the right thing for you to do. Next thing is, as a leader, you must have is faith, because when everyone is feeling down and they've can't see a way to get out of this, or they don't see their endeavor going anywhere, you must have faith and believe in the process, basically. And what this means, as a leader, it is the most important for you to have faith, because once you lose faith, everyone loses faith, and that's how it works in any situation. So to summarize that section, basically, as its character and what virtues you must obtain to be a good leader. And basically, to summarize it, you need to be dependable, you need to be patient or wise, humble, and you need to stick by your morals. And that's probably the most important part. Stick by your morals and what you believe in. The second official pillar of leadership is your capability. How do you find out your capability and what it takes to be capable? So let's start like we started with last one, and let's define capability. Capability is the power to achieve a goal when, where, and how you decide to do so. So when we talk about capability, it also sort of works with being competent. And in order, like we said, to be the leader, to lead people, like we said, you need to be basically the top standard. You need to be the basically the thing that the people work for. And as the leader, you need to be the most capable and the most dependable. So in order to know if you're capable, you have to be very honest with yourself. And like a leader, like we mentioned earlier, has to be very honest in everything he does, because basically your people rely on it, and if they can trust that you basically are capable of doing such things, they'll gain the confidence to do it themselves. So before you start basically telling people how to do things, you need to basically be able to do it yourself perfectly. And basically the way you do this is by practice, and perfect practice. Figuring out how to do it perfectly each time, not just how to do it each time, but how to do it perfectly. Because why would someone choose basically you over someone else? You have to be the best of the best in what you do and everything you do. And this doesn't mean that you have to be capable in everything, but obviously you have to be the most capable in the most important things in your field. And there's only a few simple things that will be in your field that you must basically perfect and master, because otherwise you're not competent to basically do the job, and you're not ready to be doing what you're doing. And this doesn't mean you shouldn't do things just because you're not perfect, but what I mean by this is basically you got to do things, and you've just got to keep trying again until you get it perfect. You can't just oh well, I'm not perfect means I'm not capable. Just because you're not straight away the leader of a big organization, you got to start from the bottom, or you got to start from a certain point. You can't just start from the top. So these people that are leaders, they've already gone through all the trouble. They've already learned how to do certain things. They've failed, they've tried again, and they've succeeded. That's why they're at the top. So you can't just start off being a leader. You have to work your way up. It's just like with anything. Alright, so I'm going to try to speed things up a little bit. I know I've been talking a lot about it because this is a very, intense book, and it talks about very specific things, and you really have to read it yourself. You're not going to get anything from just me talking. I'm just basically just expressing what I've learned through words in, a short video. So yeah, for the third official chapter of this book, the third pillar of being a leader, it is going to be called, and it's going to be about invention. So first, like we've started with all the chapters, let's define invention. Invention is to create something that has not existed before. Now, it says not existed before, but this doesn't necessarily have to be something completely new, a whole new concept. It can be, a new concept applied to something that's already existed. So, it can be like the lacing system has already been invented, but you can basically, they've invented, basically like self-lace-up shoes. It's not something completely new, but it's new in that field, sort of thing. So invention has its own place. It has its place in everything. It doesn't just have to be something particularly brand new, never seen before. It just has to be not necessarily even an improvement, but basically something that's inventing something that hasn't been seen before. And it doesn't, but like I said, it can be applied to something that's already been made before. Let's just talk about why invention is important, because I've basically mentioned what invention is. So as we said, it can be something that's evolutionary. It can be something that is revolutionary. It can come by accident. It can come, by basically anything. It can come by doing deliberate. But let's just talk about why invention or creativity, because invention doesn't literally have to be inventing something, but it can be basically just creativity in everything you do, and why is it important to have as a leader, and why you need it to be a leader. So, as a leader, we've mentioned numerous times that you have to basically know how to do things the best, and sometimes you don't know everything, but you have to be creative in a situation, because if you say you're going into something new, if you're not creative and you're always sticking by your same sort of everything you already know, you're never gonna get any further. You're never gonna expand on a new thing. You have to know basically when you have to change things up, and as a leader, you can basically vision in your head you have to be able to vision in your head how to change things up and how to maybe spice things up, when something else isn't working. And that's why basically invention is very important, in the sense that you have to be able to change, you work with what you got, sort of thing, and you have to be able to make the best of the situation. And that's what the leader has to be able to do. They have to lead people by being creative. A leader, a proper leader, never basically got anywhere by just following someone's manual. They have to be creative themselves, and like we said, go off your own judgment. And it will inspire people to work hard, and in the end of the day, get the job done and work to the best of their ability. Also, I think a leader has to do is basically encourage creativity in employees, because a good leader doesn't just do everything himself. He basically, like we mentioned earlier, the people are everything. He wants the people to be as creative as possible, and you can't just go into every single detail and explain literally everything, because the whole point is them to be creative. But the way you do this is basically support them in what they do, and give them the self-confidence to go forward with things and be creative. You have to encourage them even when they mess things up, but you have to let them know when you've basically messed things up, if you know what I mean. So when they've done something bad, you don't have to be just like, oh, you should still encourage, basically acknowledge that they've tried to be creative and tried something new and put effort into it, but you have to let them understand that it's not the right thing, so they can learn from their mistakes, sort of thing. And as a leader, you've already gone through all these things, so you have to teach the future generation this. Okay, now we're on to the fourth pillar of leadership, and this one is called empowerment. So let's first define empowerment. I'm just going to use the definition from this book. Empowerment is the state of recognizing you are truly free. You are either free or a slave, and unless you see the whole truth for yourself, you will never know which one you are. So the first part of being empowered, having empowerment, is responsibility, taking responsibility. And this is probably one of the most important things in this book. When you read it for yourself, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So I can't really think of a great way to explain this, but I'm just going to read a part from the book. Basically, not read, but I'm just going to basically just go over a part in the book where he basically uses an example of basically what a real empowerment looks like. So imagine a group of people that are empowered people, and what would you think that is? In this book, he uses an example that most people would think people that are free and they can decide anything they want, and they control all the decisions. So basically, they have no limits to what they do, and they can control their life. But here he basically explains that we are already empowered and that we are already able to make our own decisions, no matter at what point of life, at what stage in life we are at, or the kind of circumstances which you are in. You can basically take responsibility and get yourself out. Basically, you're already empowered to do whatever you please, because we're free people. And what people might think is, well, say you're really bad, you haven't chosen where you've basically been born, which family you've been born into. Say you're born into a really poor family, you live in a poor area, and you're really struggling to get a job, get a good education in whatever form, and so you feel like you're just unlucky, and that someone else has been lucky enough and they've been born into a family that's already wealthy, they've already got a head start. Well, in this book he talks about how basically it doesn't matter whatever point you're at in your life, or whatever stage, whatever circumstances you are dealing with, wherever you are at this point in time, it's your responsibility to get yourself out. Now, it's obviously not your fault, and that you've sort of been in this situation, but there's nothing you can do about it. And everyone's already been given what they need. He tries to explain that you've just got to basically use the tools that you've got to get to where you want to be. So the whole point of this is, as a leader, or if you want to become a basically capable person, or be where you want to be, you have to basically take responsibility for all of your actions and not play the victim. And that's where a lot of people fall in this trap. They just accept defeat. They think, oh well, I'm unlucky, or I wasn't dealt the greatest hand, and there's nothing I can do about it. And certain people have just been, lucky, and they've been given the right tools. But the thing is, it's not like that at all. He tries to explain here. You're not going to get anywhere in life unless you take full responsibility for your actions, and there's no point basically thinking that there's nothing you can do. You've been given a certain amount of base things. You've got what you need to work with. Now just get to work. There's plenty of people. Despite what they've been given and what they've started with, they're basically taking responsibility for actions, and they're the only ones that can basically help themselves to get where they want to be, to get themselves out of a situation. This applies to anything, and to be a leader, you have to basically take responsibility for any action that you do, and basically also own up as a leader, because this also has to do with trust with your people, because when you don't own up for basically your actions, for when you've done something wrong, you don't have trust in the relationship with your people. I know this has been a long video, but we're finally on to the fifth pillar of being a true leader, and this one is called you. Now, you are what you were created to be. Now, a lot of people have this feeling like they're meant to be something more, or they have a purpose, and this book is sort of not just how to become a leader, but it's to find your true purpose. And I'm not sure if I read this out, but I wrote it down. Is basically this book, at the end of it, it sort of gives you a bit more of a look at what you're supposed to be, and you start to realize that I can be this, and this is what was truly meant to be. And basically what he's going to talk about in this chapter of the book is what you're meant to be, what your purpose is, and and helps you find what your true dreams are and how you basically get there. And that's the whole point of this book. It teaches you basically the steps you need to take, and the skills you need to obtain in order to live a fulfilled, purposeful life. So fulfilling a life of purpose and finding out who you're really supposed to be is basically the virtues, not the virtues, but the moral that you live by, things that you believe in, and basically the purpose that you must fulfill is standing up for for your beliefs, and always living by your moral. And that basically is what makes up the type of person you are and who you're meant to be, the morals that you live by. Anyway, I could talk a bit more and go into a bit more depth about a few bits in the book, but I think I'm going to end it there. Hopefully this wasn't too boring, and you basically just used it as basically just a head start, or basically got you interested in reading this book, because it's a very good book. And I haven't read many books, like we've said, Sean said in his video that we're not very much into reading, but I'm only getting into it now. This is probably like the fourth book, like proper novel that I've read in my whole life. I read the book that Sean's made a video on before, and my dad just bought me this book. But it's a very good book in self-improvement and knowing yourself, because you can't lead other people if you don't know yourself. And this whole book is more about the specifics on how to lead people, how to work with people. Sean's book is probably better about that, but this book is just really helps you to know yourself, and that's probably one of the most important things you should basically know before you go into any endeavor or anything that really needs rational thinking. You must know yourself and your capabilities. Anyway, that's, like I said, that's going to be the end of the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. You can buy this book on Amazon for, I'm pretty sure, around $15. I definitely recommend getting it, and don't listen to what I've said, because I'm just basically trying to make a video out of it because I've read it, and I just want to basically, this is just like evidence that I've read it, and basically just expressing in words what I've taken away from it and what I've learned. But I obviously can't say everything. Definitely go read this for yourself, and see you next video.